Hello everyone, my name is Amanda. Welcome back to our channel. I run this channel with my friend Jen. One thing we like to do on this channel is read ARCs and review ARCs. And today I will be reviewing Ebony Gate by Julia V. and Ken Bebelle. First, I want to say thank you to Tor Publishers for my copy of Ebony Gate. I was so excited to read this book. This is a fantastic story. I'm going to get my review in a minute, but thank you so much to Tor Publishing for gifting me this ARC in exchange for an honest review. First, let's talk about the cover. This cover is so pretty. I love this cover. It speaks volumes about the book. I mean, look how pretty. I'll put it up closer here. Okay, so you have, this is like the Asian part of San Francisco. You can see it's San Francisco because you've got the bridge right there, and you've got this warrior woman, and she's got a big sword slung over her back, ready to go, walking down this alley. This is street is actually called Lotus Lane. The street is Lotus Lane in the book. And I just thought this cover was very pretty. It's very enticing. This would definitely be a cover I would pick up and want to learn more about the book based on the cover. So that's good. I want to talk about the first line of the book. This is one of the best first lines I have ever read, probably in any book. The first chapter is called Hunting Grounds. You can see that. And it says, midnight in Golden Gate Park was mostly quiet. Just the distant sound of city traffic and my grunts of excursion as I dragged the Yeti corpse to my Jeep. So there's a little insight about the book. I just felt like this was the perfect opening line for this book. That was very intriguing. And if you're one of those people that looks at the covers and reads the first sentences of books to see, if it's a purchase, then this would definitely get me to purchase the book. What is this book about? In this book, you're following Miko, and she's a young woman. She is a trained fighter / assassin. She's been described as a female John Wick, and she has lived in a couple of different cities. She has family that live in Asia, and she is currently residing in San Francisco. She's trying to get away from her family and away from her old life where she was called the Butcher, because she was basically her family's assassin. And in this world, you have warring families, and they are in competition, but they also work together in some ways. And so the structure was a little bit confusing for me, the political structure, because you have several different words for the same family. And they'll call families by the last names, but then they'll call the members of the family by the first name. So they'll refer to a family. So one of the families in this book is the Trans. And so they'll talk about the Trans, but then they will talk about individual people like Ray, let's say. And so I'm in the beginning, before you're really properly introduced to the characters, you don't really connect, or I didn't really connect which people were part of which family or clan. And each family or clan is also known for certain magical powers, or maybe hiring people with specific powers, because each family also has like their own business that they do. So one family that Amiko works really closely with, they control the waterways and the ocean around San Francisco. So if you want to move anything out of San Francisco through shipping docks, through boats, through the ocean way of travel, then you have to go through them, and they control that. So their powers are kind of revolve around that kind of business. For example, one of the top women in that family that run the shipping docks, she has like an air magic where she can like throw air at you, and it can slice right through you. Her brother can teleport, and he has an air magic where he can create big cyclones and suck things up or push things away or hold things down. So the magic kind of works like that. I will say the magical system in this book was kind of hard for me to understand because you have all of these powers and all of these little trinkets, and you have like magical artifacts, and there's not a very clear set of rules of what they do, what their purposes are. The book will kind of throw one at you and then explain it in the moment, but you know, like Emiko will say, oh, I have this talent, but you have no idea reading what the talent is good for, or what it does, or what it's capable of, or how it's used in this world. So the magic system for me was a little bit hard to get my head around at first. And I mean, even at the end of the book, where there's like massive fighting scenes, you don't know, like there's new magic that the main character discovers. So it's kind of, you know, the magic system was a little bit hard for me to follow and understand. For me, this book read pretty interesting, pretty fast at the beginning, and then it slowed down, and then some parts would kind of pick up, and then it slowed down. And I think the writing style used in this book can be kind of confusing. You're using a lot of Asian words and terms. So all of the Asian terms and words kind of threw me off, and lots of characters have several names. Even the main character, people call her different things. Like she's the butcher, she's Emiko, she's Mimi. She has all these different names that different people call her, and as a reader, for me, that can be kind of confusing sometimes. So the book was kind of hard to get through because of the writing style and the use of the words and the way that the authors kind of interchanged names and families and things like that. Here, just let me give you an example of a sentence that the structure was odd, and it took me a minute. I had to read it, and then I had to go back and reread it again to kind of fully understand what it said. Okay, so here's a sentence from the book. Freddie and Fiona lay unconscious on the grass, knee-deep in the lawn. So when I read this sentence, I think Freddie and Fiona lay unconscious on the grass. So I imagine them laying down, but then they say knee deep in the lawn. But so you can't be knee deep in something if you're laying down. So I think that the author was trying to say that they were laying in a knee deep grass. So I guess like I had to reread it and think about what they said. So if I were to write this sentence, I would say Freddie and Fiona lay unconscious in knee-deep grass of the lawn, or something like that. I mean, so when you're just like reading through the book and trying to get through this book, there's just some sentences like that you have to stop and go back and reread and try to like visualize and think, because it kind of throws you off. So some of those things threw me off in the book. It took me a very long time for me to read this book. I started reading this book during Summerween, which was sort of the beginning, maybe the second week in July, and I'm just now finishing it. So it took me a good 2.5, maybe 3 weeks to read this book, and that's pretty long for me. Like I usually read a book in 2 to 7 days at most, depending on how busy my schedule is or how thick the book is. This really took me a long time to read. Again, that's just a personal issue, a personal preference. I would never tell someone not to read the book because of that, because this book is an amazing story. The story in this book is so good. I know this is the first book of a series. They are making this a series, so there's going to be more books coming out. Although I do feel like this book ended well. I don't feel like it left you on a major cliffhanger and you just have to go out and get the second book right away. So this book was wrapped up very nicely. I was very satisfied with the ending. There's a lot of action. Actually, one of my favorite scenes of this book is a library scene, and the magic in that scene is just so clear to understand and written well. I loved that scene. There's a little librarian in there, and she's a little badass. And you know, these Emiko goes in, and these two guys, you know, try to attack her, and the librarian is having none of that. So the library was a super interesting place. I really enjoyed it. I loved the setting of the city, the San Francisco setting. It was kind of, I mean, obviously there's magic in this book, but the city sounded magical the way that they wrote about it. And I I would recommend this book if you are an avid fantasy reader. I probably wouldn't recommend it if it's like your first fantasy book, just because it does take some pushing through. So you got to reread I had to reread some of the sentences, and it took me a long time to get through. But if you are an avid fantasy reader and you love any of the Asian culture things or magic, and you like female John Wick characters, then this would be a great book for you.